Chapter 81 Flood Dragon Dungeon Part 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If nothing has messed up, then there are still more than 3 stages before I can meet the Flood Dragon, right? I should preserve my mana restoration potions and healing potions to fight against that dragon. But for now, I should use power potions and haste potions wisely. Let's recover mana and health before going back to the second. And, also need to recover my stamina. Although he wasn't tired due to his immense stamina, it was still 45% less. If he wasn't in the game where all of his stats were 10 times higher than in real life, he would have been tired by now. After resting for a while, he finally heads toward the second stage. The designation was at the end of the hallway. He walked until he reached the end where he came to the front of a new room. Unlike before, this room was completely empty. You are standing at the second stage of Flood Dragon Dungeon, Quest Generated, Quest 2. Kill 50 Trolls Reward. 150000 XP, and 1500 Gods Coins Punishment. Death, I guess. This is going to be a battle of strength. Brian took out the potion of power but waited till the trolls started appearing in front of him. The trolls were just like humans but bigger. They were shorter versions of giants but extremely ugly. The curly hair was all over their neck, behind, chest, and head. They had the black chains wrapped around their wrists. As soon as they appeared, he took the power potion. Your STR stat has been doubled, time limit. 2 minutes, 0. Well, let's go. Brian took out 2 boar bones and rushed toward the trolls. Unlike before, he was a bit hesitant about using the sword. When he reached in front of them, he swung his upper body and conjured a dark tornado around him. First stance. Dragon Twister, whoosh. 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 Thud. 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 Although he couldn't make everyone fly inside the tornado, he did manage to lift a few of them, and when his tornado disappeared, they heavily fell to the ground. The mana once again appeared on his hand as he lifted one of the bones and slammed it on the ground. Third stance. Thunder Dragon Stomp, bang. Bang. Bang bang. Dozens of lightning bolts burst out of his bone sword and slammed on the bodies of trolls. It also stopped the trolls from getting near him. He quickly gathered his mana once again for another attack, but suddenly, a large fist struck his back. Bang! Brian flew out like a kite and struck against the wall, falling to the ground. He hurriedly raised his head and saw the troll in the middle. He was full of bruises from lightning bolts, but these lightning bolts didn't kill him. They only wounded him. But even with the wounds, this troll came forward to punch him. Brian knew that evolution will make everyone intelligent. He can't underestimate them. He quickly took out another bone sword and holding both of them in his hand, he gathered enough dark mana and sprinted toward that same troll. His speed reached the maximum when he finally slashed both of his swords on the belly of the troll. Splash. Second stance. Stealth Dragon Claw, they are durable and strong but not fast. I need to use it to my advantage. Without hesitating further, he rushed toward another troll with the same move and managed to kill him. Oh. Bang. Suddenly, a troll dashed toward him from behind and smacked his back with his shoulder. Brian flew out like a kite once again and collided against the wall. Damn. Numbers will consume me if this continues. Brian gritted his teeth as he slowly got up. His HP was falling, but these attacks weren't that deadly. So, he continued to use the same attack for a few more times while getting smacked by trolls. After killing 10 of them, he finally stopped. His MP and HP have reached the half and he only managed to kill 10. He had already consumed 2 more power potions. He found whenever he doesn't use the power potion, he can't pierce their skin. He immediately understood that he can't continue like this. He must use another ace of his sleeve. Whew. He released a deep breath together with his mana. His mana burst out like a volcano and covered his entire body. The swords in his hand rose to the sky with the control of mana. When the sword hovered above them, he roared. Duplicate. At this moment, he was using his reader class ability, Creation, to duplicate the swords. In the air, nearly 40 swords appeared, exactly the number that matches the trolls. While trolls were still confused, Brian released all of the mana he had within him into the swords. The mana forged a link between the swords, slowly carving the image of a dragon above them. Sixth stance. Dragon ruling the sky, roar. The dragon's purple eyes twinkled when it saw the trolls and roared fiercely. The next moment, all of the swords fell at a speed faster than the second stance. Splash. 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 Thud. Brian suddenly started bleeding from his eyes, nose, ears, and mouth before he fell to the ground. His HP started dropping rapidly. But, he hurriedly took out the HP potions and drank them. He only consumed 2 of them, but they were more than enough. You killed LVL.20 troll, *50, you received 80,000 XP, you completed the quest, you received 150000 XP, you received 1500 gods coins, ha. It seems I can level up twice before I leave this dungeon. Seeing the amount of XP he received, he knew he was very closer to leveling up. If he manages to level up in the middle of the 3rd stage, then he might be able to level up once again at the end of the 4th stage. But, he realized that he couldn't stand up. Even though his injuries were healed, his stamina was way below the mark. Not to mention, he overdrafted himself by using the overwhelming powers of the bookworm class. He heavily sighed and rested for a long time until his stamina returned back to normal. It actually took him 6 hours. Thankfully, he doesn't need to eat to recover his stamina. After resting enough, he stood up and finally left for the 3rd stage while thinking. That was the 6th stance I managed to create. Now, I only have to perform the last stance. Though this time, it might overdraft me beyond the limits. I should probably try this as soon as I enter the 3rd stage. Although the 6th stance looked more like the ability of his bookworm, which would have made it invalid. It wasn't like that. When he used his mana to create that giant dragon, he created it specifically to use the roar of the dragon for boosting its speed. This is why those swords were faster than the 2nd stance. But that stance was truly dangerous. He exhausted half of his mana and HP in order to perform. Even though his physical body was stronger, he still couldn't bear the impact of the attack. It was no doubt that most people won't choose bookworm class, especially when you know that you can't create another account. It is impossible for the same person to create another account. At best, that person could luckily get a chance for sub.class. System, put 40 SP into strength and show my status. Name. Dragon Rider 97 race. Human level. 17 HP, 180/180, Dragon Ring 2X, Cursed. 55% stamina, MP 180/180, Dragon Ring 2X, XP. 300220/327680 class. Warlock STR 160, plus 180/AGI. 90, plus 90/VIT. 90 STM. 90/int. 90/magic. 100, Warlock, active abilities, Warlock. Cursed Hands, LV.2, Hell Flame, LV.1, active abilities, Bookworm. Creation, LV.1, Summon, LV.1, passive abilities, Warlock. Mental Fortitude, LV.1, Dark Blessing, LV.1, passive abilities, Bookworm. Enhanced Memory, LV.1, Speed Reading, LV.1, Skills. Dragon Rider 97 Sword Art, LV.5, Shadow Escape, LV. 5, Slaughtering Crows, LV.5, Thunderbolt, LV.5, SP0 God's Coin. 2087 Inventory. Boar Bones, 2 Picks, Swords, 2, Healing Potions, 16, Power Potion, 2, Haste Potion, 3, Mana Restoration Potion, 19, Super Curse Potion, 5, oh. I think I have everything I need to face off against the final boss, which means as long as I clear this stage and the next stage, I can face off against the final boss with full power only if I don't utilize my inventory, which means I must one-shot the entire stage. I just hope it will work. Anyway, I am just being too unrealistic. Even if I do manage to one-shot this stage, it won't be the same in the next stage. Brian shook his head and rejected his idea. He might not be able to save power potions and haste potions before getting the Flood Dragon. After walking for a while, he finally stepped into the third room and a new panel appeared in front of him. You are standing at the third stage of Flood Dragon Dungeon, Quest Generated, Quest 2. Kill 200 Fire Winged Demons Reward. 450000 XP, and 4,500 Gods Coins Punishment. Death. Chapter 82 Flood Dragon Dungeon Part 3. Summoning a Wife. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Alright. I should be confident, right? Brian didn't know what to say. Although he was the one who designed this stage, when he is here actually facing this stage, he felt like he can't finish this dungeon. But, he took a deep breath and waited for those demons appeared. Fire-winged demons were simple fire demons with wings. This gives them an added advantage of flying, and that's all. Brian took a deep breath and held the real sword in his hand. He raised eyebrows when he saw the number of fire demons appearing in front of him. This is nothing. It was exactly like the fire demon dungeon. You can cross it, you can one-shot it, Brian. Just do it. After gathering a bit more confidence, he finally clenched his sword and released a deep breath. He was holding one sword hilt with both of his hands. He raised his hand to the top and closed his eyes. At this moment, he activated Dark Mana and Bookworm class ability. Brian, keep remembering that move. Qin used it against Lan Ming. It is a very clear move. I just need to focus on bending splitting reality of a finite space. Roar. The moment one of the fire demons roared, his eyes opened. The dark mana covered his blade and his muscles extended as his foot took a step forward. He slashed down his sword. Was the dark sword light come out of his blade? 7th stance. Dimensional slash, splash. Suddenly, the space in front of him got split in half. Anything within that space also got split in half by the dark sword light, but it only covered half of the fire demons. The remaining half didn't even suffer an inch. Shit. 0. At this moment, Brian knew he was done for. He was already bleeding from his nose, eyes, mouth, and ears, and his mana was also depleted, but he didn't manage to one-shot the entire third stage. Thud. Just as he fell to the ground, he thought of the potions, but a new panel appeared in front of him. Quest. Complete your creation description. It has been detected this sword skill can have multiple moves. But, it needs extreme dedication and crazy ideas. Players need to create a total of 7 moves in order to complete this skill. Time. 1 year reward. 1000 XP, 1000 Gods Coins, Elixir of Life, Potion, and Spirit Contract punished. Labeled as failed creation, you received 1000 XP, you received 1000 Gods Coins, you received Elixir of Life, you received Spirit Contract. Would you like to consume Elixir of Life? Oh. Would you like to use Spirit Contract? Hell yeah. At this moment, he didn't know whether to feel tired or excited. He didn't care about XP and God's coins. He only cared about the Elixir of Life and the Spirit Contract. Spirit Contract has been published, it would take 30 seconds to complete. Elixir of Life has been consumed. At this moment, Brian felt his injuries recovering instantly, but his mana was still down. He looked at dozens of fire demons rushing toward him and took out the mana restoration potion. But before he could drink, one of the fire demons threw a fireball at him. Damn! Brian kicked the ground and jumped, dodging the fireball while the potion bottle slipped from his hand and fell on the ground. Damn it! Just give me a chance to drink one potion. Unfortunately, they couldn't listen to him. One of them punched toward his chest, covering his fist with flames. Brian hurriedly dodged the strike, but another one kicked him from behind. Ow! 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 My ass is on fire! Brian screamed while dashing toward the wall and rubbed his butt against the wall. After the fire was extinguished, he heavily breathed out. And suddenly, a portal appeared in front of him. Bedouin, the red portal showed him the land of the dead. There were bodies lying around. The mountain was broken in half and the river of water was replaced by the river of magma. The deadly aura coming out of the portal ran a chill down his spine. Slowly, a figure walked out of the portal. The figure was a stunning and gorgeous female. She was wearing a tight black dress that revealed very less of her skin. Those red lips were like the cherry in a pie. Her dazzlingly gorgeous face would even rival Lucy's appearance. Her nails were dark and she had a red crown on her head. She walked toward him and stunningly caught his chin. It's not that she was taller, but it felt like he was shorter than her. She looked into his eyes and said, "Human, among billions of spirits, hundreds of millions of dark spirits, I am the one who chose to be your spirit. From this moment on, I belong to you and you belong to me." Before he could reply anything, she sealed his mouth with hers. At this moment, his mind went blank until numerous thoughts emerged. Wait a minute. Am I getting assaulted in the middle of a dungeon? No, calm down brain. Summons are normally the creatures created from the virtual world, but then why did she say billions of spirits? Now, Brian, calm down, take a deep breath, and oops. When he literally took a deep breath, her tongue entered his mouth and their tongues touched each other. Of course, she didn't back down when he made this move. She moved her tongue inside his mouth boldly and their kiss got a bit lewder. Roar! Suddenly, a fire demon rushed toward her from behind, but she simply raised her finger and a black flame appeared on her hand. Ack! Whack! Quack! The fire demon screamed with pain as the black flames burns it. Brian's eyes widened when he saw that. He quickly pushed her away and said, Wait, I already have a fiancée and I love her very much. But, she pulled him closer and kissed him once again. After a minute, she finally let him go and said, It doesn't matter. I will be your second wife. And, since I am your spirit, I can also live inside you, though only when we are in this inferior world. Wait, you know this world? I mean, how did you come here? Brian asked with confusion as he didn't understand how this was even possible. The girl smirked at him and pulled his face closer to her and said, Do you believe in destiny? Well, it doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not. I was just waiting for you to summon a spirit. And, to my proof, look here. She stretched out her finger and a small portal appeared above them. In that portal, he could see the bodies of thousands of creatures like her lying on the ground. They looked no different than humans, maybe except for their beautiful and handsome faces. Oh, there were only 30 seconds, but over 10,000 spirits were gathered to be your spirit. So, I killed them all and finally got chosen. At this moment, Brian didn't know how to react. 10,000 spirits gathered just to be his spirit. It's just absurd. It isn't logical at all. Suddenly, she flicked his forehead and said, Don't think too much. Believe in destiny and everything will be revealed soon enough. Believe in destiny. Almost in every novel he had read in past, none of the main characters believed in their destiny. He is a scientist. He is the smartest man on Earth, and probably in the galaxy, his own thoughts. How could he believe in such an abstract concept of destiny? But, right now, none of that was important. He still had a dungeon to cross. He released a deep breath and said, "We will talk about that later. For now, can you help me fight?" The girl nodded her head and said, "But I can only use S.rank strength with your current physical strength, and also I can't use half of my strength alone when I am not in the spirit galaxy." Spirit galaxy. That must be the galaxy where she lived. He shook his head and collected his thoughts for the battle. At this moment, one of his slowly degrading weaknesses was cut off. With the help of Elixir of Life, his lifespan was no longer going down. He took a deep breath and released the mana he had recently recovered. You are not using the full potential of dark mana. Don't release it without having any negative thoughts. The dark mana comes from the negative part of the universe. You can increase its potential just by getting angry or releasing killing intent. Think of the worst that could happen to your life. Suddenly, the girl next to him spoke after seeing his dark mana. Brian shook his head and said, "I know how dark mana works. I just don't want to have negative thoughts in my mind." Foolish husband. Look at this. The girl sneered and a small drop of dark mana appeared on her finger. Suddenly, her eyes changed a little and the surroundings got a bit colder. At this moment, she released that drop of mana toward the group of fire demons. Boom. Chapter 83 Flood Dragon Dungeon Part 4. Identity Crisis. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When he saw the power of the dark mana explosion, Brian's eyes were left wide open. Of course, he knew the power would increase whenever emotions were released in dark mana, but this was still too great. So, you think you shouldn't use emotions? The girl turned her head at him and asked. L.C. Brian was startled for a moment but quickly shook his head and said, "You don't understand the cost of me not keeping my emotions under check. There will be too many things at stake if I ever forget to control my emotions." The girl stared at him for a moment and finally shrugged her shoulders. "Well, if you say so. But, you are a spirit. You can merge with me to increase my power. Aren't you afraid that my emotions will affect you?" "Unless it is the change of my own emotions, nothing will affect me. If I couldn't control my emotions while getting angry, then..." After that Brian didn't continue. He knew what would happen if he ever loses his emotions. He couldn't think of the consequences of him losing his emotions for grudge or hatred, especially with his level of intellect. He shook his head and said, "Anyway, merge with me." The girl nodded her head and her body got covered in a dark light. It flew toward him and entered his body. At this moment, a slight change occurred in him. His nails got darker. His hair got covered in dark light and a cold killing intent burst out of him. Only when she measured with him, did he realize just how much killing intent she had within her. He raised his hand and the dark mana came out of his palm. This time, his mana was totally dark purple. It was the true color of dark mana. Suddenly, a thought came to his mind and his dark mana transformed. Class ability. Hell Flame, 0. Before, he wasn't sure about using this ability because it could increase the rapid spreading effects of the curse. But now with the spirit, he felt that the curses weren't much effective against me. He could even feel the stamina returning back to him. He understood the reason immediately. His spirit was absorbing the power of curses. After all, those who mess with dark mana have full control over curses. It was only due to that damn firewall, he had made curses his weakness. When he released the hell flame, the entire room started burning. The black flame spread around everywhere and burned everything to ashes. Some fire demons used their wings to fly and stay out of it, but eventually, the fire caught up to them and killed them as well. After 2 minutes, all fire-winged demons were dead, and a continuous flow of panels appeared in front of him. You killed LVL.20 fire-winged demons, *200, you received 320000 XP, you level up, you received 10 SP, you completed the quest, you received 450000 EXP, you received 4,500 gods coins, you leveled up, oh. You received 10 SP. At this moment, the spirit came out of his body and nodded her head with satisfaction. This technology in your world is truly fascinating. Some of you might not have the access to zero-point energy, but those who do not have it, always find a way to get it. Hearing her words, a strange expression appeared in his eyes as he asked, "Do you mean there are other worlds where virtual reality games to make one stronger is possible?" The spirit looked at him and rolled her eyes. "Of course, it is. Your world is too far behind others' radar, or else, if you had found the Cosmic Human Association, CHA, they would have helped you build this virtual reality. But, it really surprises me that you people were able to create this world without getting help from fourth-dimensional tech. I would very much like to know how." Brian stretched out his arms and smirked. "It's not impossible if you can tap into the fourth-dimension codes without using the fourth-dimensional tech." At this moment, the spirit's eyes widened as she asked, "So, it is really you who created this? Destiny didn't lie to me. You are level 15 intellect." Brian looked at her with surprise and said, "I am far beyond that. Anyway, you said something about the fourth-dimensional tech. Who built them for this CHA? Are there other people with such a high intellect?" The spirit shook her head and said, "It is taboo to talk about those people. All I can say is that none of them are alive right now. And they were so technologically advanced, that they were the ones who created Chaos Online. By the way, do you know Chaos Online?" Brian's eyes narrowed at this moment. He took a deep breath and nodded his head. "Yes, I do know. I am trying to represent the Earth for Chaos Online." Hearing his words, the spirit giggled. "Well, aren't I just lucky? I am spirit and can go with you inside the Chaos Online. Well, luck or destiny doesn't matter. For now, I have to clear this dungeon, and then, we can leave." Brian opened his status and thought for a moment. Name: Dragon Rider 97 Race. Human Level: 19 HP, 200/200, Dragon Ring 2X, Cursed. 55% Stamina, MP 300/300, Dragon Ring 2X, Spirit Blessing, XP. 87180/1310720 Class: Warlock STR 170, plus 180/AGI. 100, plus 90/VIT. 100 STM. 100/int. 100/magic. 100, Warlock, Active Abilities, Warlock. Cursed Hands, LV.2, Hell Flame, LV.1, Active Abilities, Bookworm. Creation, LV.1, Summon, LV.1, Passive Abilities, Warlock. Mental Fortitude, LV.1, Dark Blessing, LV.1, Passive Abilities, Bookworm. Enhanced Memory, LV.1, Speed Reading, LV.1, Skills. Dragon Rider 97 Sword Art, LV.5, Shadow Escape, LV.5, Slaughtering Crows, LV.5, Thunderbolt, LV.5, SP, 20 Gods Coin. 6,587 Inventory. Boar Bones, 2 Picks, Swords, 2, Healing Potions, 16, Power Potion, 2, Haste Potion, 3, Mana Restoration Potion, 15, Super Curse Potion, 5, My mana has drastically increased. And, this time, it is not thanks to a ring. That means even in the real world, I would get the share of this much mana. But, if I want to level up once more, I would really need a lot of XP. Though that would help me reach the second rank superhero strength. If I keep on using those dungeons to level up, then I might be able to reach level 70 within 6 months. Considering that she only had time to play New Gods and also knows the hidden dungeons all around the New Gods, reaching level 100 wasn't a problem. It's been around 2 weeks and with all that things I have to deal with back home, I still am close to reaching level 20. I should probably continue on this dungeon and finish it as fast as possible. Now, with her, I wouldn't have that much problem. Indeed, he didn't expect to get such a powerful spirit. He only wanted spirit for gaining a certain element in the real world which would eventually make him stronger than most superheroes, but her strength is really overwhelming. Now, he is even more certain that he can finish this dungeon with ease, but he is worried about the home problem. How in the world is he supposed to explain all this? He sighed helplessly and walked toward the next level. Why are you feeling so helpless? I can easily help you cross this dungeon. The spirit noticed his helplessness and asked curiously. Brian shook his head and said, "That's not what I am talking about. I am afraid of trouble back home." The spirit giggled and said, "Well, that's your trouble. I have already declared you my husband and I am not going back on that." Brian sighed even more heavily. "That's the problem. You can't just decide on me as your husband. Where is his dignity as a man would go if he lets others decide for himself? But, he can't say no. Another party is not just beautiful and dangerous but also is stuck with him due to the contract. First, vampire. Second, werewolf. And now, a spirit. Is he going to open the harem of all races throughout the universe? That's just too scary to think about. Because while some of them are extremely good, some are extremely bad considering their body structure. There is a race made out of stone. He can't just have sex with a stone. His little brother will break before even he could contribute anything. But, this encounter made him understand something. His identity. He was gradually getting more clues that he wasn't a human, not a human from Earth. But, he doesn't understand who was he. His parents and his DNA prove that he was human. His parents were ordinary. But, he was extraordinary. Having a photographic memory, high-level intellect, and ability to communicate with technologies. Oh, sometimes, he even wondered if he is a son of a technomancer. But, one thing is certain. He is not a human from Earth. Chapter 84 Flood Dragon Dungeon Part 5 You are listening at novelfull.audio. You killed LV.20 Lizardman, *400, you received 640000 XP, you completed the quest, oh. You received 850000 XP, you level up, you received 10 SP, you received 8,500 God's coins. After he finally crossed the 4th stage, he leveled up once again. He was really happy that he reached LVL.20 so soon. This time, the numbers were really high. Your body can't bear my strength, but you insisted on doing it without using any potions that you had. Are you sure it is the right thing to finish the final boss by yourself? The spirit came out of his body and asked. Brian nodded his head and said, "Well, if you weren't here, I would have been forced to use many potions again and again due to their numbers, which would decrease the odds of me defeating the Flood Dragon. So, with your help, I easily finished the 4th stage and now, I can face the Flood Dragon with everything I've got. Besides, if I use your help now, it wouldn't make much impact when I use your help against the powerful guys." The spirit blinked her eyes twice and asked, "But, wouldn't this be a great practice for you?" "Kind of, but if I fight it by myself, it would still be a great practice for me. Besides, I am dying to use all 7 stances of my sword art against this dragon." Brian excitedly spoke. He loves dragons. He loves them very much, but it doesn't mean he won't kill them when he really has to. "Alright, then, but I will be ready to help you all the time." The spirit nodded her head and said. It is good to let him battle, but if he really is in trouble, she wouldn't hesitate to fight for him. After all, she is now his spirit. She belongs to him, 0. Brian smiled and walked toward the final boss room. Unlike the previous room, it had a giant door. When he reached in front of the door, it opened on its own. As he stepped in, he could feel a chilly wind crawling on his skin. Grr. Suddenly, a loud noise of a creature breathing rang throughout the room. Nearly 100 meters away from him, there was a massive cave. From the cave, a long body covered with blue scales walked out. It had 4 massive claws like eagles and a head like a deer. Its neck was quite long with the tail of a snake. It had no wings, no fire-breathing power, but it was still a dragon. Flood Dragon. LV.25, boss. Seeing this, Brian took out all the haste and power potions he had. Your STR has doubled, time limit. For minutes, your AGI has reached 270, temporarily, time limit. 6 minutes, drinking more potions only increases the time, but not the effects. After his haste increased, he took a deep breath and released his dark mana. Roar. The Flood Dragon instantly got enraged when he sensed his mana. He understood that this human was going to attack him now. With his roar, several wind blades flew toward him. Each wind blade was sharp as a real blade but not as strong. Oh. Brian held 2 real swords in his hand and swung his body. First stance. Dragon Twister, crack. 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 All of those wind blades got smashed into pieces. While the tornado was still up, he moved toward the Flood Dragon. Seeing him approaching, the Flood Dragon swung its tail toward him and slapped it down. Third stance. Thunder Dragon Stomp. Suddenly, he stopped moving his hand and stabbed one of his swords on the ground. Bang! 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 Dozens of lightning bolts released out of his sword struck the tail of the Flood Dragon and pushed it away. But, those lightning bolts didn't manage to leave a scratch. At this moment, a giant image appeared behind him. An image of an Asura with 100 arms, holding 100 swords. Roar. Fourth stance. 100 arms Asura, the Flood Dragon conjured a giant hurricane around it. The black cloud appeared above them hurricane, and the wind encircled front of him, forming a giant tornado. Bang! Bang! 2 bolts of black lightning fell inside the tornado and made it stronger. When the 100 arms Asura approached the tornado, hundreds of swords collided against it. Nearly 50 of them got zapped with lightning bolts while 50 of them managed to break the tornado. Only Brian was in the middle but the forceful winds were still there. With a single swing of his tail, the Flood Dragon smashed a powerful wind toward him. But, Brian took a deep breath and changed his stance in the mid-air. Second stance. Stealth Dragon Claw, bang. His sword sliced the wind in half. When it got slashed, the wind lost its control and blasted everywhere with an intense force. Brian was pushed above the Flood Dragon as both of them collided against the wall. When Brian fell on the head of the Flood Dragon, he immediately took out 5 potions and dropped all of them on the head of the Flood Dragon. But, the Flood Dragon suddenly caught his body with its tail and slammed him into the wall. Bang! Crack! Cough! The impact was so great that he coughed out blood. The place where he was smashed got cracked as well. But, the Flood Dragon didn't stop. He continued to slam Brain more until suddenly, it lost its grip over him. Flood Dragon has been cursed with Curse of Speed, speed decreased by 3 times, Flood Dragon has been cursed with Curse of Strength, strength decreased by 3 times, Flood Dragon has been cursed with Curse of Endurance, endurance decreased by 3 times, Flood Dragon has been cursed with Curse of Stamina, stamina decreased by 3 times, Flood Dragon has been cursed with Curse of Mana, total mana decreased by 3 times. When those notifications appeared in front of him, a giant smile appeared on his lips. He took out a healing potion and drank it. This was the confidence he had before coming to this dungeon. He didn't put his entire fate on an abstract concept such as luck. Although luck did help me and made it easier for him, it still didn't mean he wouldn't have completed this dungeon. With the Flood Dragon's power decreasing by 3 times, Brian immediately went offensive. He released his dark mana extensively, condensing a giant phantom of a dragon. This dragon was even bigger than the flood dragon. When it appeared, the eyes of the flood dragon changed and a trace of madness appeared in his eyes. Roar! He roared and condensed the same powerful hurricane with black clouds, but this time, it was not just much smaller but also weaker. On other hand, Brian's dragon was much bigger. Fifth stance. Dark Dragon Emperor. The dark dragon roared and swung its powerful claw, breaking the hurricane and the tornado, but it didn't end there. It moved toward the hurricane with all of its force and managed to slash the scales of the flood dragon. Seeing it bleed, Brian immediately took another offense, releasing another extensive amount of dark mana. He threw his sword at the sky and duplicated it with his bookworm class ability. When the flood dragon saw that, he stopped caring about the bleeding and stood on his rear claws. He raised both of his front claws and combined them together. Suddenly, a giant tornado emerged from its claw and engulfed those swords inside it. When Brian released his dark mana on those swords, all of them fell extremely fast, but the tornado still managed to sweep them away except for 2 real swords. Those swords fell straight over his body and pierced his skin. Sword, come! Brian roared and 2 of his sword vibrate on his body and made the wound even worse. After the sword escaped and reached Brian, he immediately held only 1 sword in his hand. He raised the sword above his head and suddenly, the spirit behind him looked at his back with shock in her eyes. At this moment, the dark mana spread around him, forming a giant circle. He used the bookworm class to form a different dimension within that circle, and the next moment, his sword slashed down. 7th stance. Dimensional slash, splash. The sword released a dark light which split the dimension in half, splitting the flood dragon in half. But, it was only for a second. When the dimension disappeared, the dragon died with a giant cut on its body. It wasn't split in half. You killed LV-25 Flood Dragon, you received 5000 XP, you received Dragon Scale, you received a treasure chest, you cleared the dungeon, you received an additional 5,000,000 XP, would you like to open the treasure chest? When he saw the last message, a big smile appeared on his lips. He put away his sword and immediately pressed yes. You received Dragon Sword, you received Elixir of Dragon Heart, you received Mana Potion. Finally, I got my hands on the elixir. Chapter 85 Getting rid of weaknesses, Getting True Dragon Body. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wait, hubby, you have already unlocked Mana Domain. The spirit suddenly appeared in front of him and asked with visible shock on her face. Mana Domain. Brian was confused for a moment but immediately remembered his dark mana circle and shook his head. No. That's not a mana domain. I use my control over dark mana to create a circle, then I use another class ability which is created to create a separate dimension in that space in order to cut it. This is a very overpowered ability, but look, the effect will appear any moment now. Just as he said, he started bleeding from his nose, ear, and mouth. But, this time, he didn't bleed from his eyes. It clearly showed that the improvement in his physical strength is helping him reduce the side effects. Seeing his condition, she couldn't help but ask with worries, but Brian asked her not to worry. He took out a healing potion and drank it. In the real world, he can't do this, but in this world, it is much simpler. After healing from the injuries, he looked at the spirit and said, "Let's leave. I have something more important to do now." Saying so, he and the spirit left the dungeon. Just when he stepped outside, a notification appeared in front of him. You are the first to clear Flood Dragon Dungeon, would you like to reveal your name? Yes, no, Brian rolled his eyes and pressed on no. He was thankful that this time, it actually asked rather than just doing whatever it wanted. Player hashtag has become the first one to completed the hidden dungeon. Flood Dragon Dungeon. His achievement has been recorded in the Hall of Fame. Player hashtag has become the first one to completed the hidden dungeon. Flood Dragon Dungeon. His achievement has been recorded in the Hall of Fame, 0. Player hashtag 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 has become the first one to complete the hidden dungeon. Flood Dragon Dungeon. His achievement has been recorded in the Hall of Fame. Brian didn't care about his achievement. It was solely created in order to identify the next big superheroes of the future. Those who can make their name on the Hall of Fame will immediately receive the benefits from UMA. He simply rushed toward the Dragonfly City with his spirit, but on the way, a thought emerged in his mind. Is Tempest online right now? I told him to stay in the city today. Thinking so, he contacted Tempest and learned that Tempest was still in the city. He rushed toward the city with his spirit. But before they could reach the city, he asked her to go inside him. He doesn't like to gain more attention. Her beauty was so great that he was afraid that people might come flooding toward her. Unfortunately, she didn't agree. When he told her the reason, he doesn't have to worry, and that's just happened. As they walked inside the city, people only stared at her but nobody dared to approach. After they reached in front of the Eden store, they saw a young man standing outside. Of course, there were other people as well, but that young man was none other than Tempest. Upon seeing him, Brian walked toward him, and Tempest was already aware of him because of the beautiful lady walking next to him. Everyone was literally talking about her. "Boy, I am glad to see you here. Are you ready to finally say goodbye to your weakness?" Brain walked next to him and gave him a hug from the side. Although it has only been 2 days, he missed this team. Hearing his words, Tempest's eyes widened. He nodded his head as if he was a little kid who was asked to go to an amusement park. Brian took him and entered the Eden store. Originally, he thought her presence will make things difficult for him, but it was quite the opposite. As they walked, other people started giving her a certain space. And that space was occupied by 2 of them. At this moment, Tempest whispered, "Mr. Brian, who is she?" "Oh. She is my contracted spirit. Her name is..." Suddenly, Brian found that he doesn't know her name. He turned around and asked, "You didn't tell me your name, did you?" As a higher level intellect, he didn't expect to ask her such a question, but he really doesn't remember her telling him her name. She smiled at him, which made her face dazzle like a star. Just her smile was enough to put every woman around her in shame. "My name is Lena, Lena huh. That's quite a nice name." Brian turned around and whispered, "Her name is Lena. I already heard that from her." Tempest was speechless when Brian told him her name. Not just him, everyone else also heard her name. She didn't try to hide it at all. Brian walked toward the counter and saw a beautiful lady behind it. "Can I rent a small room for 3 hours? I also need a few things. A fully equipped burner, mana stabilizing device, mana supplement roots, a hammer, and also a potion jar." The woman behind the counter nodded her head and immediately took out all the items he asked for. These were the basic items that every potion maker uses except for the hammer. So, she already had it in stock. After paying the total cost of 700 gods coins, he was given a key and sent to the back door. Tempest and Lena also followed him quickly as they entered an empty room. "Lena, I want you to crush this scale into power. Tempest, help set this burner." Brian took out the scale of a dragon and gave it to her. Then, he took out a flask, a burner, and some glass tubes, and handed them to Tempest. While he asked for fire dragon blood from him and took out a small root made out of flesh. It was the elixir for dragon heart. It was literally the dragon's heart but modified into an elixir. As long as he eats this, he can instantly remove all the weakness he has received from the warlock class. But, that's not his objective right now. He starts squeezing that meat. It contains a lot of liquid, which is the main ingredient containing the power to remove those weaknesses. It was quite a hard job and took him nearly an hour. In the meantime, Lena was crushing the scale into power while Tempest was given other tasks such as mixing mana supplement roots with mana potion and adjusting the mana stabilizing device to adjust the amount of mana in that mixture. After they finished, Brian put everything on the flask and starts the burner. Now, he just needs to maintain the temperature and everything will be over after 1.5 hours. For 1.5 hours, they did nothing but stare at the burner. Finally, after 1.5 hours, Brian turned off the burner and put the boiling mixture into another jar. They waited 20.5 minutes until it cooled down and finally, Brian and Tempest drank half of these. When the new mixture entered their bodies, a strange reaction occurred to them. Brian could feel the roars of the dragon inside his blood. It was quite strong but slowly, it calmed down as it circulated through his body. In the meantime, red scales started appearing above his skin. True dragon body. Finally, they were able to get this body. After 5 minutes, both of them opened their eyes. While Tempest got true dragon body, Brian not only got this but also managed to remove the weaknesses of the warlock class. Since he had already gotten rid of the lifespan problem, now he had nothing to worry about. Thank you, Mr. Brian. Tempest bowed in front of him and thanked him. He was really grateful that Brian helped him. He could feel a strength brewing in his body, something that rarely happened. And he also got a chance to improve his strength by physical training in the real world. Brian also enjoyed the same advantage. It's okay, Nolan. You just need to continue improving your imagination and strength to fully utilize the bookworm class. Now, let's leave this place and log out. I am dying to exit this game with my full stamina. Brian chuckled and they finally left. Before leaving, he opened his status and checked the new changes he has received. Name: Dragon Rider 97 race. Human/half, dragon physique. True dragon body level. 20 HP, 410/410, Dragon Ring 2X, MP 310/310, Dragon Ring 2X, Spirit Blessing, XP Red. 585/2000, 1 XP Red. 1000 XP, Class. Warlock STR, 275, plus 180/AGI. 205, plus 90/VIT. 205 STM. 205/int. 205/magic. 200, Warlock, active abilities, Warlock. Cursed Hands, LV.2, Hell Flame, LV.1, active abilities, Bookworm. Creation, LV.1, Summon, LV.1, passive abilities, Warlock. Mental Fortitude, LV.1, Dark Blessing, LV.1, passive abilities, Bookworm. Enhanced Memory, LV.1, Speed Reading, LV.1, O. Skills. Dragon Rider 97 Sword Art, LV.5, Shadow Escape, LV.5, Slaughtering Crows, LV.5, Thunderbolt, LV.5, SP, 30 God's Coin. 6587 Inventory. Boar Bones, 2 Picks, Swords, 2, Healing Potions, 14, Mana Restoration Potion, 15, this is good. I am finally a half-dragon. Brian has never been this happy, but he couldn't enjoy it because he knew some troubles are lying ahead. Brian asked Lena to enter his body since he was going to log out. This time, she agreed. After that, Brian logged out. The next moment, he opened his eyes inside the pod. As soon as he came out of the pod, Lena came out of his body. She looked around and saw dozens of techs lying around. But, Brian hurriedly took her up. It was already the night time. He walked in front of Charlotte's door and knocked a few times. After a minute, she finally opened her door while rubbing her eyes. But, her eyes remained wide open when she saw Lena behind him. Brian took a deep breath and said, "Lena, this is Charlotte." "Charlotte, this is Lena. We have something to talk about right now." Chapter 86 Rejecting Lena. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It was the middle of the night. The lights in the hall were turned on. 3 people were sitting on couches. 2 of them were sitting in front of each other while another one was sitting at the side. Between them, there was a small table. The situation in this hall seemed tense since the 3 of them weren't speaking to each other at all until the girl on the side finally spoke. "I won't accept her." Charlotte had anger brewing in her eyes. She pointed her finger at Lena and shouted at Brian. Hearing her words, Lena's eyebrows rose. She didn't speak but instead kept staring at Charlotte. Brian sighed and spoke, "All right. I have a fiancé who said I can't marry you." He was referring to Lena, who also noticed the helplessness in his tone and spoke, "Is there something wrong with me? I know it is hard for you to share your husband, but his destiny has stored something else for me. I am a part of his destiny. If you have any problem or grudge against me, tell me. But, destiny won't accept your unreasonable rejection." Hearing her words, Charlotte visibly burst out in anger and shouted, "Shut the F***ck, B***T***H. I don't know who you are or where did you come from, but if you think you can get my husband based on your lies, then you are wrong." She turned her head at Brian and shouted, "And, how could you let someone like her become your spirit? You are the smartest man in the world. How can you believe in the abstract concept like destiny?" Brian shook his head and said, "Wifey, I know you are angry and you deserve to be angry when your husband comes home with another girl, but you can't blame me for not believing in destiny. Because I am the smartest man, I know more about destiny than even her. Destiny is a concept of cause and effect. Your destiny is forged by the cause and the effects will lead you to your destiny. This is how destiny works. We can change our destiny but we can't change the cause and effect." 0. Alright. Alright. Stop lecturing me about destiny. Anyway, I won't accept her no matter what you say. If you still want her then, I will leave this house. Charlotte shouted at him and her tone seemed totally firm. But, this got him confused. Why was Charlotte insisting on not having her? After all, when it comes to Lucy, she didn't reject it at all. In fact, she rejected her own chance to reject Lucy. He took a deep breath and stood up. He held her hands and made her sit down. He sat on the floor as he looked into her eyes and asked, "I know this is very personal and I will accept every decision you make. But, you should also know that she is my spirit now. She is going to stay with me, at least for now. So, tell me, what's bothering you? You didn't reject Lucy but you are so against her. I just want to know." Hearing his words, Charlotte hesitated before she finally said, "Because I am jealous of her. I am not jealous of Lucy because I know she has to earn your respect and love if she wants to be with you, but what about her? She hasn't done anything. She just arrived in front of you, kissed you, and told you that she is going to be your wife. I know you don't love her and you are just considering her to be someone who will eventually be your lover or leave you." At this moment, she clenched her fists, and almost broke his hand as she continued. "But, what has she done to be your wife? What has she ever accomplished? I have been in love with you for more than 8 years. I kept chasing after you even though I couldn't tell my feelings to you. I was there with you when you needed someone. I am here for you as your fiancée and future wife. I took a job while being in college just so that I can cook food for you. I worked hard in college so that I can make conversation with you. I tried everything just to be with you. And now, someone wants to have all that benefit without even doing anything for you. Oh. How can I accept it? I earned your love and a place to stay with you. What did she accomplish? She just came and tried to take the place that only belonged to me. How can I give it to someone else?" Hearing her words, Brian got silent. He understood what Charlotte truly meant. She did everything just to be with him. So, how can she accept anyone who hasn't done anything? Wife, second wife, the status is almost the same. It's wives at the end. So, how can she accept someone who hasn't done even a bit that she has done to get that status? It wasn't a battle of the throne, but for her, she has fought very hard to get this place. Hearing her words, Lena didn't know what to say. When she chose Brian as her host, she simply made up her mind because of his amazing destiny. She thought if she becomes his wife, she would be able to involve in that destiny. As for love, it was a concept that she never understood, and she hoped that by being with him, she will understand what love truly is. Although she hasn't been with him, just hearing Charlotte's words made her understand what love truly meant. For Charlotte, it was acceptance. She just wanted to be accepted by him. She wanted to be accepted in his heart. She wanted to be accepted in his home. And for that, she paid a huge price. That's why she got every right to be jealous of her. At this moment, Lena spoke. Then, what if I can do everything for him? What if I can earn your acceptance? What if you accept me as his second wife? Charlotte looked at her and asked, can you though? You don't even understand what marriage and love mean to us. You are just forced by destiny. Can you do everything for him? Can you prove to me that all of my efforts weren't wasted? Lena nodded her head without any hesitation and said, yes, I can. I have come too far. I have left behind everything just to get here. Yes, I did become his spirit because of his destiny, but even for that, I have given up too much. There is no place for me to leave. The spirits abandoned by the host can't remain as the spirits. I might not be one who helped him in his worst condition. I might not be the one who chased for his love for 8 years. But, I can prove that I will do everything for him. I can prove it by my own strength. I don't have the strength like you, but I have the strength that you don't. You are jealous of me because you think I can be of as same status as you without even doing anything for him. But, I want to ask you something. What if I can make you give that status to me? Do you think you can do that? I am not a woman who will share her husband with just anyone. Charlotte stared at her and asked. Yes, I can. Lena nodded her head and sat down. At this moment, Brian finally stood up and spoke. I know I am not getting a chance to speak here, but I just want to say something. I am the one who you want to be with. I love Charlotte. I don't love Lena. But, she is my spirit and she will stay with me. So, how about we take out time? We can't chase Lena out. And, my wife won't accept her as well. So, we will take our time, live peacefully and slowly build our relationship. I already have a wife and the second one is already pending. So, we will discuss Lena's situation later. For now, she will stay here as a guest and my spirit. She is strong and she can help us in her ways. So, I think we should do it like this. Then, he looked at Charlotte and asked, so, what do you think? Inside the UMA's technical department, the light in the main computer room was on. Inside that room, a young man was typing at the keyboard while standing in front of a giant server. He was none other than Barry. He was typing so fast and the codes on the screen were hard to understand until he pressed one key and a window popped up on the screen. Are you sure you want to delete the Dragon Rider 97 account from the main server permanently? Yes, no. He moved the cursor to yes and clicked it. Oh, Dragon Rider 97 account has been deleted permanently, zzzzz. Suddenly, Barry felt shocked all over his body and lost consciousness. He fell to the ground and after a while, a small dot-sized bug came out of his ear and flew away. Pat. But, after flying a few meters, it suddenly exploded on its own and got obliterated into atoms, scattering everywhere. Next day, bnoel.m, huh. The door of the main server room is still open. Only Barry has the access to this door. Did he come here and forget to lock it? The head of the technical department walked inside the room. But, his eyes widened when he saw Barry lying on the ground unconscious. Barry. Chapter 87 New Trouble. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Next day, Brian woke up nearly at 7 and stretched out his arms. He went to the bathroom and finished his morning routine. After coming out of the bathroom, he went toward the kitchen. At this moment, both Ely and Wraith were awake and having breakfast. When Ely saw him, she stopped her breakfast and rushed to his embrace. "Daddy." Not seeing him even for a day made her miss him very much. Brian missed her as well. "It seems like you are in a good mood today. Excited to go to school?" Ely's eyes brightened when Brian noticed that. She nodded her head and said, "I made 2 new friends yesterday. They said they will have snacks with me today." But before Brian could say anything, Wraith snorted, "Humph. They are just fooling you to get your food in the cafeteria." "Shut up. You are wrong. They are my friends." Ely turned her head and shouted. Then, she turned back and asked, "Daddy, they are my friends. He is just lying, right?" Brian patted her head and said, "My daughter is the best. Why wouldn't they be her friends? Let's go and have some breakfast first." After that, they started eating breakfast when Lena suddenly walked out of her room. Seeing her, Charlotte, who was serving breakfast, narrowed her eyes. At this moment, Brian could smell a sense of urgency to play New Gods, 0. Suddenly, Lily on his watch spoke. "Sir, I have just detected something wrong happening with your account in New Gods. Sir, your account has been deleted from New Gods." When she said that, her voice was quite loud so everybody heard that. Brian was stunned. Just when he thought of playing New Gods, his account got deleted. Wait. How? How can his account get deleted? "Brian, is something wrong with New Gods? What's going on?" Charlotte hurriedly approached him and asked with concern visible on her face. Although she seemed angry with Lena's matter, she had a genuine concern for him. Hearing her words, Brian didn't reply but rather clicked on his watch and a virtual projection appeared in front of him. He clicked a few times on the screen and accessed the main computer. After searching for his name on the main computer, he didn't find anything. At this moment, his expression turned hideous. He only had 2 scenarios in his mind. Either 5 directors used their 5 different codes to delete his account, or someone who is capable of using the 4th-dimensional codes hacked into the main computer and deleted his account. "Daddy, what happened? Are you in trouble? Can Ely help?" Ely rushed down from her chair and clutched his pants, asking, "Oh." Seeing his daughter in worry, Brian smiled and shook his head. "Don't worry, Daddy can handle this by himself. You have something more to do. Let's not destroy this mood with my problems. First, let's have some breakfast." Charlotte still looked at him with worries but he calmed down her. "Daddy, who is she?" Suddenly, Ely pointed her finger at Lena and asked. "Oh yeah, you haven't been introduced yet. Ely, she is Lena, a spirit. She is our guest. Lena, she is Ely. She is my daughter. And, he is Wraith." Brian introduced them and noticed Lena's eyes were not on his daughter but on the Wraith. She looked at him and asked, "Why is someone from Angel Race here?" Brian rubbed his head as he realized the problem. She was Dark Spirit who utilizes dark mana. He was an angel who utilizes light mana. They have a huge difference, just like him and Ely. His father is in a difficult situation, so he let me take him of him. For now, he will be here with us. Brian replied. Although they had their difference, he can't ask anyone to leave or fight. He knows that they must find a way to properly cooperate. You don't need to be so generous. Lena snorted and sat on an empty chair. Her words saddened Wraith. After all, he was just a kid now, he is not getting any good attention from anyone. Hey! If you are a problem with him, then why don't you leave? Hearing her tone, Charlotte shouted at him and walked near him. Wraith, you don't need to mind her words. Just like how you don't like Ely's bloodline, she doesn't like yours. Oh, hearing her words, a smile bloomed on Wraith's face. All right, big sister Charlotte. Wraith nodded his head and started eating his breakfast happily. At this moment, Charlotte looked at Brian and pouted. She was telling him that he was stepping out of line. Although Lena was a spirit, Wraith was just a child. It is one thing that if one child bullies another child, but if an adult tries to bully a child, shouldn't other adults stand up? Although they were threatened to take care of Wraith, he was here now. She expected Brian to be a little better with Wraith. But, she didn't say anything. She severed Lena some breakfast, and after having breakfast, she helped Ely and Wraith get ready. Finally, she dropped them off just when the bus arrived. After sending them away, she returned to the mansion and saw Brian getting busy with his situation. But, this time, she walked up to him and put her hands on her waist, looking at him angrily. Brian also noticed her shadow and raised his head. Seeing her angry expression, he asked, "Did I do something wrong?" "Of course, you did. Wraith might not be someone from this planet or our relative, but he is still a child. Don't you think you were too cold at him? While introducing them, you only gave his name, and while explaining his situation, you sounded as if he is a burden to you. Don't you know it will only affect his mindset? And, he is the only friend that Ely has, though she doesn't accept him as her friend. He is looking out for her in the class as well. At least, be more responsible and treat him like a child." At this moment, Brian's mouth was wide open. This was the second time he has seen her angry like this. Yesterday, it wasn't surprising considering it was her own private thing. But today, it was about Wraith, not her. But, she was still angry. He sighed and stood up. "All right. I will be nice to him. Anyway, come with me for a while." Brian took her hand and walked toward his room. Charlotte followed him with a confused expression. But, after 5 minutes, she understood why he brought her here. It's just that she couldn't think of it at this moment. Outside the room, Lena suspiciously looked at the door and suddenly, her ears picked up a noise. The next moment, her face turned bright red. She couldn't believe they were doing that so early in the morning. "Barry, boy, you finally woke up. I was worried." Inside the main computer room, the director breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Barry opening his eyes. Barry looked at him with confusion. He looked at his body and looked around. "Sir, how long was I out for?" "Maybe the whole night or a few hours." "By the way, what were you doing in the main computer room?" the director asked. "Night." "But sir, wasn't the conference held during the day?" "And, what do you mean, what am I doing here? Didn't someone bring me here on that day? I couldn't have walked all the way to this place with those injuries, right?" Barry looked at him with confusion as he asked. Now, it was the director who got confused. He looked at Barry and asked, "Boy, what are you talking about? You were healed the same day by Seelan. And, the last time I met you was yesterday evening. What happened to you?" "Sir, what are talking about? I don't remember anything after I got injured out by that pressure. Isn't this my first time waking up after getting those injuries?" Barry asked with confusion. The director's eyes narrowed as he asked, "So, you don't remember anything after you woke up? But, you clearly were conscious and also did a lot of work yesterday. Perhaps something else happened last night. But, why did you come to this room?" Barry thought for a moment and said, "I wouldn't come here unless it is something important. And, since I don't have the memories of what I did yesterday, did something major happen to New Gods?" "No. Nothing happened. But, the computer screen is still on and showing the same window from the moment I arrived. Normally, this screen remains off unless it is used." The director pointed at the computer screen and said. Barry slowly stood up and walked in front of the computer. When his eyes fell on the window, they widened. "Dragon Rider 97 account has been deleted permanently, oh my god. What have I done?" Barry felt like he has lost his soul. He started shaking with fear and tension. But, he immediately turned around as he remembered Brian's words. Unless someone uses the 5 directors' codes or hacked the main computer, nobody can delete the account from the main computer. So, you don't have to be worried about anything. He instantly grabbed the director's hand and said, "Director, I must go. I must inform Brian right now. Something wrong is going on." Chapter 88 Trouble seems to be bigger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Before even the director could say anything, Barry left the main computer room. He couldn't help but feel confused. He went to the computer screen and looked at the same window. Dragon Rider 97. Dragon Rider 97. Wait, isn't that Brian's own account in New Gods? It is deleted. How? How is this possible? What happened? At this moment, he panicked like never before. He couldn't believe what he was seeing on the screen. He finally understood why Barry was shaking so much. Barry rushed out of the main building while many people tried to greet him. But, he ignored them and rushed in front of a helicopter. He instantly opened the door and spoke. "Take me to these coordinates." Saying so, he transferred the coordinates to the helicopter's AI. It responded immediately and flew toward Zone C. UMA's headquarters was made in the middle of most zones. It was created in a way to reach and control the outbreak from any corner of the world. Zone C wasn't that far from this place. While on the helicopter, he was constantly shaking. He couldn't believe what happened was actually his fault. He was constantly trying to calm down, but no matter how much he tried, he couldn't remain calm. He knew the whole creation of New Gods was only because Brian wanted to get stronger and represent humanity for Chaos Online. He knew Brian planned everything in order to get stronger. And now, he has made a huge mistake that would cost Brian a huge time. After 20 minutes, he finally reached Zone C. The helicopter flew toward the mansion while Barry opened his system and received Lily's call. "Please authorize before entering. Please authorize before entering. 0. Unless someone comes through the main gate, Lily will immediately act against them." "Lily, it's me, Barry. Authorization complete. Mr. Barry, welcome to our home." After getting authorization, his helicopter finally moved closer and landed in the garden. Barry hurriedly came out of the helicopter and rushed to the door. But just when he was pressing the bell, the door opened as Lena walked out. She stared at Barry and asked, "Who are you?" She was surprised to see someone this early in the morning. Barry didn't recognize her, but he didn't care. "Where is Brian? Call him fast. Something bad happened." Barry hurriedly entered the room, which made Lena frown, but hearing something bad happen, she didn't ask. Inside Brian's home, he got a notification from Lily about Barry's arrival. He was laying next to Charlotte. Both of them were covering their bodies with sheets. After getting notified though, he hurriedly got up and wore some clothes. "What happened?" Charlotte frowned and asked. She just had one of the best times of her life and now, he was already walking away. "Something bad happened. Barry is here to explain. Let's go." Brian didn't say much and left the room. When he came out, he saw Barry. Barry also saw him. "Oh. Brian." Barry rushed toward him and hugged him hard for a moment. "Man, I am really sorry. I really don't know what happened. It just happened. I am sorry, man. I am really sorry." Brian frowned upon hearing his apology. He patted Barry's head and spoke, "Tell me, what happened? I know you couldn't delete my account. We might have greater threats lurking in the shadows." Barry slowly let go and Brian took him to the couch. They sat and started talking. "I don't know what happened. The last thing I remembered was being knocked unconscious from the pressure released by the Werewolf King. I thought attending a conference with those people would be glorious, but I didn't know how dangerous it would be. After I lost my consciousness, I woke up in the main computer room where I found that your account was deleted. But according to the director, I recovered my consciousness after Miss Seven healed me. But, that wasn't mean. I don't remember anything at all. I understand what is going on. Brian's expression turned serious. Although his account being deleted from New Gods was really serious, this seemed a greater threat. Because it felt like someone was specifically targeting him. He took a deep breath and called the director. "Hello, director. Brian, is Barry with you? What in the world is happening? Why was your account deleted without using our codes?" The director asked with concern. Brian shook his head and said, "Let's not talk about the account for now. I want to know how Barry performed after the day he got knocked out by that pressure. Please, tell me everything." The director nodded his head and spoke. "After he got knocked down, I asked Seven to heal him. She did heal him and soon he regained his consciousness. He performed normal yesterday. It didn't feel like it was someone else. But, one thing did strike me as a surprise. Barry is someone who likes to have fun while working, but yesterday, all he did was something I would call, following a schedule. Of course, I only find it odd, so I didn't ask him. And today morning, I found him on the floor unconscious. By the way, I just retrieved the footage of yesterday night. All other cameras were disabled except that one you specifically connected to in the main computer room. I am sending you the footage. Beep. The next moment, a video file appeared in front of him. He opened the video file in the virtual projection and it started. In the video, Barry seemed to be working late. His colleagues left while he was still working. After everyone else, he finally stood up and walked toward the main computer room. In the main computer room, Barry opened the main computer and opened the main processor. Through it, he started cracking the code that blocked his access to the main processor. He continued to code. It took him the time from midnight to the morning to finally finish it. After he finished, he accessed the first level of control over the main processor. He paused for a moment when he found that he still had to code more to get complete access. But after learning that he can still delete characters from this, he didn't code further. He deleted Brian's account and suddenly his body trembled with shock. He fell down to the ground and a few seconds later, a small explosion occurred a few meters away from him. Lily, zoom it by 100x and also replay the last 10 seconds. Lily proceeded with his instruction and zoomed in. Only then, did they see a small bot coming out of his ear and exploding after eating a certain distance. They could still see a few letters on the bug. Mission accomplished. Seeing this, Brian turned silent. He was thinking about the entire situation and trying to find out who was the one that actually wanted to oppose him. General. That was his first guess. Emperor Wraith's general was someone with high intellect to accomplish this, but when he thought about it again, he realized it wouldn't be him. His codes were specifically created to be accessed by 5 different codes that stay with 5 directors. And, if someone wants to override them, they must form a creative set of algorithms that can change their set of codes and then access them. But, that didn't happen. What happened here was that someone used a specific code that froze his codes for a moment and thus, he deleted the account. After a certain period of time, those codes will be active once again. That's why the person who froze his codes couldn't access the entire main processor. Brian. Sorry. That bug took control of me because only I had the access to that room and also the password to open that computer. Being the main programmer in UMA, he was given a duty to implement or change anything in the server. And, only he can open that main computer to upload the new changes into the main processor. Brian shook his head and said, "Don't worry, I already have a plan if something like this would ever happen to me. For now, you should go and take some rest. After that, do something for me. I will send you a device that will absorb those nanoparticles of that bug. I believe those particles are still there. As long as I get those particles and recreate that bug, it will be easy to find the person who is targeting me. Barry hesitated for a while. In a single night, he crushed his closest friend's path to becoming strong. At this moment, Charlotte patted his shoulder and smiled. Are you worried that he will hate you? He is your closest friend. You are his closest friend. In fact, he is angry because someone manipulated you to get to him. Oh, so, don't worry. Return to UMA and take some rest. BL.net. Barry finally released a deep breath and cracked a smile. Thanks, Charlotte, and congratulations. His eyes immediately fell on the engagement ring. At the same time, he walked toward Brian and hugged him once again. I know it is not a good time to congratulate you. But, congratulations for being engaged. Thanks, man. Now, go and take some rest. You need it. Finally, Barry left the mansion and the hall remained silent for a while until Lena asked, Who do you think is targeting you? Brian shook his head and said, I am not sure if I am going to find out. I am not going to let anyone get to me through my friends or families. Chapter 89 Insulting Ely Enraged Wraith. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Can you open the new account in New Gods? Charlotte looked at him and asked. Brian shook his head and said, It is not possible. Unless I create another New Gods, I can't make another account. Wait, doesn't that mean you can't get stronger unless someone represented your Earth in Chaos Online and awakened the human's bloodline? Lena frowned and asked. Don't worry, I have something in my mind to make me stronger. Before I couldn't create it because of some personal reasons, but now, I can make it and finally start a new way to get stronger. Brian shook his head and answered. What is that? Lena asked. Brian cheekily smiled and said, I can't tell you that now. It's a surprise. But, I must find the mastermind behind this plot. Whoever is plotting against me will pay for sure. Charlotte stroked his head and said, Don't worry, you will surely succeed. So, are you going to work on it? Brian shook his head and said, First, let's settle things with someone first, and then I will start building that thing. As I said before, it might take half a year to make it. Good then. Let's continue. Saying so, she dragged him to his room while leaving Lena alone in the hall. Lena didn't say anything. She knew Charlotte was doing this to make her feel bad. She thought for a moment and walked toward the kitchen. She decided to make a proper lunch to impress them. In the land of Bathory's mansion, Great Prophet, you called me. Lucy asked as she walked inside a small room, 0. The old lady was sitting in the middle as she opened her eyes upon Lucy's arrival. Somebody is targeting him. Somebody extremely powerful. Hearing her words, Lucy's eyes shrunk. She knew what extremely powerful meant from her mouth. Are you sure? Who would target him in this situation? Lucy asked just to confirm, fully knowing that the Great Prophet doesn't lie. Indeed, the time hasn't come yet. But, someone has already deduced his identity. His powers have increased, but he still doesn't know the scope of his powers. Princess, this is the time to go back. Teach him what I taught you. The Great Prophet spoke with a deep voice. But, Lucy hesitated and asked, I can't go. I am afraid. I don't want to be rejected by him. What if he still holds the grudge? Princess, if you keep hesitating, someone will take him away. The Great Prophet spoke. At this moment, Lucy's killing intent burst out, I will kill that person. Nobody is more worthy than me to be his bride. Half a year. I will give her half a year to spend time with him. The Great Prophet sighed and said, for now, that person doesn't have any bad karma against him, so he wouldn't be in any danger, but I fear, something catastrophic will happen to Earth after a year. We can only prevent it if he learns to use his powers better. Zap. Suddenly, the Great Prophet's eyes trembled as several images appeared in her mind. Each of these images was his, but they seemed incomplete. Oh. Suddenly, a big smile appeared on her lips as she said, "Princess, you don't have to go now." "No, you mustn't go now. He can't be disturbed. It's happening. It's finally happening. He is going to utilize his powers for something greater." "But, didn't you just say that he might be in trouble?" Lucy looked at her with confusion and asked. "I can't find the future at once. They just keep coming to my mind." That someone also wanted him to use his powers, even more, grow his powers, and finally understand more about himself. I don't know his motive or his identity. But, what he did is good for now. The great prophet explained. Finally, Lucy shook her head and said, "I really don't understand you at all. So, I will just assume that he will be fine. I should leave now. Princess, before you go, I would like to give you some advice. Strength, talent, or beauty doesn't make you worthy of him. Find out what truly made you worthy in the first place." The great prophet suggested her, but her words only offended Lucy. Lucy clenched her fist and turned around, leaving without even thinking for a while. Inside the room, the great prophet shook her head and said, "Someone will eventually make you realize what makes you worthy for him. And, Brian, why aren't you trying to retrieve those memories? I know they are just child play to you. Didn't you say that you won't remain ignorant? Do you also need more time to understand the truth like her? What has the future stored for you? All I can see is destruction and death. Can you change it? I am waiting. Eons have passed but only I am left alone. When will you come for me?" Death. In Whitelock Academy, "Hey Eleanor, come and sit with us." Suddenly, a boy raised his hand and waved at Ely, who was holding her food tray. Next to him, there was a girl. Both of them were the only children in the cafeteria who didn't have food on the table. Ely rushed to them and sat down. "Look. I asked the cook for adding more food. We can share it together." Ely smiled as she put the tray on the table. But before she could touch anything, both of them started eating. "Thanks for bringing us food, Ely." The boy thanked her while eating and the girl remained silent. Oh, at this moment, some of the students stared at them, especially at her, with a weird gaze. On a separate table, Adam and Wraith were eating. Adam looked at Ely's table and spoke, "Are you just going to let them use her? You know what's going on here, don't you?" "Others have already told me about them," Wraith spoke while eating his food. "Then, don't you want to stop them?" Adam asked. Wraith raised his head and looked at Adam. "Stop them for what? So that she would hate us even more. Let her suffer this time. And, besides, it's her attitude that holding her back from making more friends. Who would like you if you just keep showing off in front of the class?" Adam hesitated for a while and continued to eat his food. During the entire lunch, Ely didn't get to eat anything. She remained hungry. But, in her mind, she had already gotten 2 new friends. She hoped now she could make more, but whenever she tried to talk to them, they just walk away. Frustratingly, she returned to her seat and the entire day passed like that. Next day, the same things happened. She remained hungry and didn't manage to make more friends. But, on the 3rd day, something interesting happened. When she went to their table with her food, she saw them with their own food. She excitedly sat in front of them, said, "Congratulations. Now, you don't have to eat mine. Who told you can sit here?" The girl who hadn't spoken a word for 2 days suddenly spoke. Hearing her words, Ely's smile suddenly froze. "Go away. This table is only for us." The girl continued. Ely stammered, but, aren't I your friend?" "Friend? Who would be friends with you? You don't have any friends." The boy replied coldly. "But, you ate my food and told me that you were my friends." Ely spoke like she has lost her soul. Tears almost came out of her eyes. "Are you crying? Ha ha ha. We were lying to you to eat your food." Who would want to befriend a lonely ghoul like you? Are you her friend? Are you her friend? Are you her friend? Are you her friend? The boy looked around and continued to ask the same question and finally turned at her. See. No one is your friend. You are just a violent girl who gets to be the teacher's favorite. At this moment, a hand touched his shoulder. I think you forgot to count me. This disgusting eyes girl over here has a friend. When the boy turned around, Wraith's palm slapped his cheeks so hard that his body flew like a cannonball and struck against the wall. Bang! The entire cafeteria fell into chaos. The girl who was sitting next to that boy peed when she received his gaze. But, Wraith didn't do anything to her. He was only angry because that boy went overboard. It was one thing if he had just told her that he was using her to eat something, but he openly made her cry. Wraith walked next to her and patted her head. I told you earlier, didn't you? They were just fooling you to get your food. They were punished because of what they did to some other students and wanted to use you to fill their bellies. At this moment, Adam stood next to Wraith and raised his hand at his wrist. Wraith. Your bracelet. Wraith lowered his head and saw that the bracelet which controls his strength was broken. He didn't realize that he just used an overwhelming strength against a child. But, suddenly, he remembered something. He was also a child. Chapter 90 Trouble in Academy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sir, you have a call from Ms. Shirley. Would you like to pick it up? While Brian was working on his lab, Lily notified him showing the call from Shirley. At first, he thought it would be Shirley that he knew from New Gods, but later, it turned out to be the headmistress. He hurriedly accepted the incoming call. Hello, Mr. Brian. Hello, headmistress. Is something wrong? Yes, Mr. Brian. I would like you to come to the academy this instance. Brian was slightly confused for a moment, but eventually, he left. Before leaving, he thought of informing Charlotte. She was sleeping, so he only left the note and informed Lena. She asked to come with him, but he rejected it. He also changed his clothes and wore some formal clothes before leaving. He took the car and finally left. After 10 minutes, he reached the back gate of the academy. The guards asked for his identity, and after telling him his daughter's name, he finally entered. This time, he didn't even need to wait. He was immediately sent to the headmistress's office. In the office, there were 2 kids and a man with his wife. Those 2 kids were none other than Ely and Wraith. When they saw him, they rushed toward him and held his legs. Mr. Brian, this time things have gotten way out of hand. Shirley looked at him and spoke. You bastard. As soon as Brian entered and Shirley addressed him as Brian, the man pounced toward him with fury. But, suddenly, powerful energy burst out from behind. It was overwhelmingly strong. In an instant, the man was suppressed. He couldn't move. But, it was neither the power of bloodline nor just pressure. It was something else. Power of space. Headmistress, I don't think your name is on the top 10 list despite having so much power. Brian looked at her with amazement and asked. Mr. Brian, some things are good if they are under control. Junior Wraith has not only used violence in the academy but almost killed a student. Mr. Eric and Ms. Elena are parents of that student. And, you never mentioned that his powers are over the 9th rank. Our bracelets are made for controlling such strength. I am afraid he can't study here anymore, and we also have to settle the issue with Mr. Eric and Ms. Elena. Shirley spoke with a straight and cold tone. Hearing her words, Brian's expression darkened. He looked at Wraith, but Ely spoke from the side. Daddy, he only did that because that boy made me cry. It wasn't his fault. Brian released a deep breath and looked at Shirley. Headmistress, I never expected this to happen. None of us would have ever expected it. But, suddenly, he looked down and said, Wraith, Ely, can you go out for a moment? Oh. Ely and Wraith looked at each other and left. After they left, Brian took out a small cube and threw it on the ground. The cube covered the entire room, forming a blue room. Brian turned his head to Eric and Elena. Eric was still controlled by the power of space, but Elena wasn't. He bowed his head and said, "Ms. Elena, I apologize for everything that kid did. But, I hope you listen to what I have to say first. I don't know if Miss knows the threat level we have separated on Earth." Unfortunately, Elena didn't reply. Seeing her not replying, Brian continued, "The highest threat level implemented on Earth is Omega level. And, the threat of that boy is above Omega level." At this moment, both Shirley's and Elena's eyebrows twitched. It's not his strength but his status. He is the prince of the angel race. The current emperor of the angel race has conquered 3 galaxies and has the millions of soldiers in Omega rank. On Earth, the only person closest to reaching Omega rank is Lucy Bathory. It's not that I want to support his behavior, but we are in a situation where if we make a single mistake, we won't survive the next morning. My words might not be proof to you. That's why I brought this as well. Oh. Saying so, Brian took out a small golden card. There was a figure of 3 men handshaking in the middle. When Elena saw that golden card, her eyes narrowed. You are not a director. You are not even someone important. How do you have such a card? Brian shook his head and spoke, "It is not that I am not important. It's just that I am too important, that's why nobody knows much about me." Then, he looked at Shirley and continued, "Headmistress, the Emperor specifically asked me to admit his son to this academy. I am afraid we have to make some compromise for now." Then, how? Mr. Brian, his power levels are way above the normal children even if they are werewolves or vampires. It does make sense that he comes from such a high level power after knowing his current strength, but we can't keep him here. Although the matter started with Miss Elena's son, it was supposed to be a small dispute between children, not a battle between rankers. And, in the whole academy, he is the only student who can break the bracelet power. I hope you can understand. That boy possessed too much strength. I can't keep him here. Brian expected her to say this. Who in the right mind will let a shark be with small fish? But, he had also prepared a proper response in his mind. Headmistress, I have something that can restrict his powers whenever he comes to the academy. I will also personally ask him not to make any conflict. Shirley raised her head and asked, "Mr. Brian, the only thing that could possibly restrict a ranker above the 9th rank are those shackles that UMA uses to keep their prisoners. You don't want to shackle him like that, right?" Brian shook his head and said, "Of course not. I can't shackle him. Those shackles are just too big. I can bring the size of those shackles to a size of a bracelet. From tomorrow, Wraith will wear them all the time, but it will only be activated whenever he enters the academy. Mr. Brian, you are not joking, right?" Shirley narrowed her eyes and asked. Brian shook his head and said, "I usually don't make jokes. I am an inventor and also the reason why I have the highest card of UMA. I can't reveal everything to you or Miss Elena." Shirley looked around them and said, "Considering this virtual projection that can block out sound and vision, I assume you are not lying. And, I hope you will also pay for her son's injuries since those injuries are quite severe. We have hired Ranker Seelan." Brian nodded his head, "I will inform UMA about the payment. Don't worry, Miss Elena, your son will be fine. But, I hope you can make sure that your son doesn't make my daughter cry. I love my daughter very much." Elena narrowed her eyes when she heard that threat. She clenched her fist but didn't attack. She was only an S. rank. Even if she attacks, Shirley can easily block her. That's why she didn't attack. "Headmistress, I shall take my leave. UMA will cover all the damage and Wraith will come here with a new strength controller. You can test it before letting him enter the class." Brian took back the cube and the whole class returned to normal. He walked out of the room where he saw Ely and Wraith standing with sad faces. He couldn't help but stretched his hands. When they saw his hands, their eyes sparkled as they hurriedly held his hands and left the academy with him. After they came out of the academy, he drove back home. "Daddy, why doesn't anyone want to be my friend?" While they were driving home, Ely suddenly asked. "Because they are jealous of how outstanding you are. Tell me, who are the only two people who talk to you?" Brian asked with a smile. Ely glanced at Wraith and spoke, "Him and Adam." "And, who are the only people who fight with you but never really leave your side in class?" Brian asked again. "Them." Ely lowered her head and replied. "Wraith and Adam are not jealous of you. They bicker with you because they want you to realize that you are competing with them." "Uncle!" Wraith unhappily shouted from the back. He looked outside the window, not daring to look at Ely. "Ha ha ha. Did I reveal your little secret? Listen, Ely, they might not be friends to you, but they are still your rivals. Wraith is the prince of 3 galaxies. And, Adam is the son of the strongest superhero, Gabriel, of Earth. But, you aren't far from them. You are stronger than Adam and you are smarter than Wraith. That's why they compete with you. They are your rivals but they are also your friends.